The Titans reportedly have signed 17 undrafted free agents. We're going to go through the class now and talk about each guy and their chances to make the final roster. This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville. More on Sinkers coming up in a little bit. In partnership with 440 Sports and Broadway Sports Media, I'm Justin Graver. With me, as always, Justin Melo. And Justin, Titans fans love some of these UDFAs, but I would guess most people don't know much about any of them, and our job today is to kind of fill in that gap and let you know just a little bit about each of the reported undrafted free agents that the Titans will be bringing to rookie minicamp. Now, quick caveat, quick disclaimer here off the top. Last year, I think we talked about at least one guy as a UDFA that was reportedly signed by the Titans who just never showed up at any minicamp, OT, just never became actually part of the roster. And there was one guy who did show up that we never really talked about because we missed that. The reporting was slightly erroneous, I will say, with last year's UDFA class. But this year, we have 17 guys we've heard about that we think are the guys, but the Titans won't confirm this group until rookie minicamp kicks off. So, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I feel pretty good that this list is incredibly accurate. Right. I've been able to independently confirm most of them through talking to their agents. And I've been in touch with other people that it just makes me feel really good that this list is very accurate. So, if we're not going 17 for 17 here, I'll be pissed if we're under 16 for 17 because I've done a lot of work to confirm this list.
Well, all right. With that, then let's just dive right in here. We're going to start with an offensive tackle out of Florida, Brandon Crenshaw-Dickson. What do we know about this guy?
First thing that's most important about Brandon Crenshaw-Dickson is this deal has $245,000 in guarantees, $20,000 in a signing bonus. Now, I believe that is the most guaranteed money they've given any UDFA this year. That puts him in the top 10, any UDFA in the entire NFL. Wow. So Titans went after this guy pretty hard. Now, what do I know about him? Well, a couple things. Like a lot of these UDFAs, they tend to be older players, right? They stay in college longer. They're trying to develop, trying to increase their chances of getting drafted. He was in college, I believe, for 6 years. So in 2019, though, he redshirted at San Diego State. And then he plays there 2020, barely in 2020, reserve one game, but he's there all the way up until 2023 is what I'm trying to say. In short, goes to Florida in 2024, fairly big step up from San Diego State, plays pretty damn good, 12 games with 11 starts at right tackle. So certainly put himself on the NFL radar. He is not a very good athlete. That is the caveat with him. Why do these guys go undrafted? There's a reason for all of them. He ran 5.33. At the NFL Combine. He was an NFL Combine guy, 24.5-inch vertical, 8-foot broad, 8.15 in the three cone. I mean, some of this stuff is not great. Almost 5 seconds in the 20-yard shuttle. So athleticism's not really there. But he, pretty good tape at Florida this year. A lot of money in guarantees. Titans didn't draft a tackle, right? We talked about the possibility of them doing so. It would have been a bit of a surprise if they did. Ultimately, they didn't. He'll be in contention for backup duties behind Dan Moore and J.C. Latham. They don't have a lot there, right? They remember they cut Nicholas Petit free air already, which, thankfully is a move that they made. What do they have? Jalen Duncan, John Ajoku. I don't have any really remaining faith that those guys are even number threes at the NFL level. They did sign, Blake Hance, I think his name was, in free agency. He's got some tackle guard flexibility. I don't know for sure where they're going to use him. We'll probably have to, or primarily use him. We'll probably have to wait for camp to get here to get clarity on that. But indications are, based on the money and what they got on the roster, this guy's got a shot.
Yeah, they also have Oli Udoh was a guy they signed the same day they signed Blake Hance. So there's bodies there, but there's not a ton of high level competition. And yeah, like you said, given the guarantee, I would say this guy at least has a shot to stick around on the practice squad as the first man up if an offensive lineman goes down. So interesting signing. Obviously the Titans want to develop that tackle depth. You need a swing tackle in this league because guys get hurt all the time. And Dan Moore, as much as they paid him, if he were to be cut in 2 years, it would surprise nobody because of how much the contract is worth per year. compared to his level of play. We'll see how he performs under Bill Callahan in a new scheme, but there's definitely a pathway to a starting tackle job opening in the next few seasons on this Titans roster. Not necessarily expecting it to be this guy, but you never know. All right, let's talk about the next UDFA. Isaiah Raikes, nose tackle out of Auburn. What do we know about him?
Well, he got a decent-sized guarantee, too. According to Tom Pelissero, it was $85,000 in guarantees for Isaiah Raikes. This is a true nose tackle through and through. Auburn had him listed at about $325. He played at Texas A&M for a couple of years before going to Auburn. So this is a guy that was in the SEC, for 4 or 5 seasons, a lot of big game experience, a lot of big game production, if you will. When I say he's a nose through and through, 1.5 career sacks in a bunch of years in college. So this is a run stopper. Make no mistake about it. Obviously, they've got T'Vondre Sweat at that spot, who's going to be the unquestioned starter. And then they've got Keandre Coburn behind him. And I've always liked Coburn quite a bit. I think he's a pretty good football player. I think he's your ideal, rotational guy. So, Raikes is, I think it's a bit of an uphill battle. I don't think you keep 3 true nose tackles. You either need to outperform Coburn in camp or, God forbid, you need Coburn to get hurt. Whatever it is, though, they like him. They gave him, again, $85,000 in guarantee. So a decent amount of money here.
Yeah, and when it comes to the defensive tackle spot, I think the starting lineup is pretty much set in stone. Abdullah Anderson is another guy in the room. You mentioned Coburn, but there's only 6 guys even competing in camp for what could be 3 or 4 spots. So there's room for, the 3 at the top are 100% Jeffrey Simmons, T'Vondre Sweat, Sebastian Joseph Day. And then Keandre Coburn's probably a lock. So is Raikes competing with Abdullah Anderson for maybe a last spot if they decide to keep 5? That's how I would see that position group playing out. Next guy on the list is...
Sorry, I'll add one more quick tidbit because I think we're able to offer some insight on this show that our listeners and viewers really appreciate. You might not get elsewhere. I was told from a source that Tracy Rocker, the defensive line coach, and the defensive run game coordinator, I forgot the Titans had a defensive run game coordinator, Travis Smith. 2 of them were fairly involved in this signing, and they liked Isaiah, and they felt there was a plan in place for him. So, do with that what you will.
Interesting. That's something that they said about every draft pick. They had their post-draft press conference yesterday, Mike Borgonzi, and he said, was asked about working with the coaching staff on identifying the developmental type of guys. And they said, we have to have a vision for every single player that we draft. And I think that mostly applies to the UDFAs as well. Maybe not a completed vision for every UDFA, but for the most part, I think they're not bringing in guys and just saying, let's see what they can do. It's let's see how we can mold them to do what we think they'd be best at based on their traits and what they've done before. Next guy on the list is Clarence Lewis, a safety out of Syracuse. What do we know about Clarence Lewis, Justin?
Yeah, there was some confusion here. I think he was first reported as a corner, but I interviewed him during the pre-draft process, and we talked as if he was a safety, and he talked like he was a safety. So he's a safety. So I interviewed 3 Titans UDFAs, by the way, by total fluke. That's a lot of fun. It's always I do so many. I always end up with a couple UDFAs on fluke. So Clarence Lewis used to play at Notre Dame. He transferred over to Syracuse. Fairly productive college football career. 161 career tackles, 31 PBUs, 4 picks. This is what he said to me about his game, and I think it lines up with what you see on tape. I like coming downhill and playing as a tackler. I'm at my best when I keep the action in front of me. I would agree with that. He almost reminded me of a safety line, almost like a safety linebacker hybrid. I think you want him playing in the box. I don't think he's quite athletic enough to be your single high type. Obviously, they've made some moves at safety this offseason, right? They still got Amani Hooker. They draft Kevin Winston Jr. in the 3rd round. They signed Xavier Woods in free agency, and they re-signed Mike Brown. So I would say Clarence Lewis is probably entering camp as the 5th safety at best. So he's got his work cut out for him here. I could also see him being a special teams guy. That's probably his most realistic pathway to the roster, is to prove you can be one of the better players on special teams.
Yeah, we talked about how safety has been an under the radar need, and obviously they drafted Kevin Winston Jr. in the 3rd round, but it is starting to get to be kind of a crowded room now, with the top 4 guys being obviously Amani Hooker, Xavier Woods, Mike Brown, the new draft pick rookie. How many safeties, specifically safeties, are they going to keep? I do think if Clarence Lewis can
Sorry, they got other UDFAs too. Like they've got so many UDFAs.
But if Clarence Lewis can sort of moonlight as a backup corner as well, that versatility might open a door for him. Although I wouldn't rate his chances of making the roster particularly high just because of the depth now that is in that room. But, the practice squad is always a place that if they like a guy enough and there's not a spot for him on the roster, they will try to stash him there. All right, Justin, the next one on our list here is obviously my favorite. I think it's probably every Titans fan's favorite. It's the one guy on this list that every single Titans fan probably knows already a little bit about. Wide receiver Xavier Restrepo out of Miami, the high-profile signing here, a guy that probably had offers from other teams, but as soon as the Titans called, it was like, hey, Cam Ward's here. Do you want to come reunite with him? And we're going to pause quickly in our breakdown of this class for I'll Drink to That, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville. And what I'm drinking to today, Justin, is the reunion between Xavier Restrepo and Cam Ward. And not just the reunion, but the fact that they get to add Xavier Restrepo as an undrafted free agent. They don't have to spend a draft pick on him. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. His pro day 40 time was obviously a huge hindrance to his ability to get drafted, but also this was a very large draft class because it's the last year of guys that had an extra COVID eligibility year entering the class. So like guys that typically would be picked in the 6th and 7th round in this class bled into undrafted free agency because there's just more draftable level players in a huge draft class. So that's another reason I think Restrepo got pushed out of everything. But the fact that you're able to bring in Miami's all-time leader in receptions and receiving yards. We're talking about the school that produced Michael Irvin, Reggie Wayne, Andre Johnson, Santana Moss. Xavier Restrepo's name is at the top of the record books. Just a savvy route runner who already has a connection to Cam Ward. If I had to bet money on one UDFA to make the Titans roster, there's no doubt in my mind I'm putting it on Xavier Restrepo. What do you love about this reunion and about Restrepo coming into Tennessee?
Well, it feels like the Titans had 10 draft picks, not 9, right? Because Xavier Restrepo was a draftable player. I know, to me, the 40 times the only thing that prevented him from getting drafted. But certainly he's a draftable talent in my opinion. Looks draftable on tape. I'm chuckling here because in the history of Titans undrafted free agents, and there have been a lot of them that everyone has fallen in love with over the years, I'm going to go out on a limb and say none of them will be quite as revered, quite as loved as Xavier. If they cut Xavier Restrepo at the end of training camp, there might be a riot outside of St. Thomas Sports Park. I mean, I can't even remember. I mean, Bryce Oliver last year was a little bit of that. Remember, like, he wasn't undrafted, but like Trey McBride, I think. Was it? No, not Trey McBride. Was it Trey McBride? It was Trey McBride. The same name as the tight end. Threw me off there for a second. Trey McBride, like, in the history of Mason Kinsey's, Xavier Restrepo is the Derek Mason of Mason Kinsey's and Trey McBride's. And like, this one is going to send Titans over the deep end. But I'm not going to sit here and push back against it. There's a great chance he makes the team. I guess the question, does the athleticism or lack thereof, and I didn't think he was a 4.8 guy on tape. Like, I was stunned when that was the number that came out. Does the athleticism or lack thereof hold him back too much at the NFL level? That's the one question mark. I think he's a really good, savvy route runner. I think he's one of those guys that can get by without elite athleticism. And don't underestimate the chemistry with the quarterback, obviously, right? Like, Cam Ward's going to feel, that's actually, I didn't think of this until right now. Like, are they going to give them any, at rookie minicamp, obviously, are they going to give them reps together at training camp? Normally, a UDFA receiver ain't running with the first number one offense, right? So doesn't even get reps. I feel like you got to find a way to get him some reps with Cam. It's going to make Cam more comfortable. He's going to appreciate those familiar surroundings. So certainly, we don't know what the money was here from a guarantee. That one hasn't leaked yet, to my knowledge, but I imagine there were other teams after him, and, Titans had the obvious advantage with the Cam Ward trump card, if you will. But, excited about this one, and I'm not blaming you or anyone for being excited about it. I'm just having a good laugh because, boy, this is the hype is about to be out of control.
Yeah, I do think when it comes to them getting reps together, Cam Ward, now, apparently when Restrepo got the phone call from the Titans position coach to say, hey, you're coming, we want to bring you to Tennessee, you coming, he said, Cam's been calling us since the 4th round about drafting you. Cam Ward has not been shy about, kind of telling the Titans staff what he likes and what he wants. He had apparently told Brian Callahan the night he got drafted that you better be putting this particular play in the playbook. And he was asked in his press conference what play it was. And he said, switch verts, which is a 4 verticals variation where the 2 of the receivers run like a switch route up the field. So he's already telling them what plays he want. He's been telling them, I want you to draft Xavier Restrepo for me, please. And they get him in the fourth round, and they get him as an undrafted free agent. It would not surprise me one bit. In fact, it would surprise me if Cam Moore doesn't go to the coaching staff, whether it's right away or after a few practices, and say, "Hey, get this guy up with the first team. I need reps with. I want to throw to him." And that could be Restrepo, or it could be anybody that he starts to like better than someone else in the room, or vibes better with, or thinks that they are a better player or they know where to be or whatever. He will voice that opinion. If X isn't getting any reps with the first team, he's going to go to the coaching staff and be like, give me some reps with him, at least give me a chance. And we'll see if it works out. And I think that that's a way that Restrepo will take a few first team reps when training camp comes around. And also when you talk about the slot receiver position, it's not like the Titans have great dedicated slot options. Tyler Boyd last year was a slot-only guy who is not here anymore. The other competitors for slot snaps are, I would say Tyler Lockett is a massive competitor, but as I mentioned on the pod we did after the Titans signed Lockett, only 35% of his receptions last year came out of the slot. And yeah, that's because JSN is also a slot dedicated guy. But if Restrepo's good enough to be a slot dedicated guy, he's going to eat up some of those slot snaps, and you can bump Tyler Lockett out to the Z or the X position, and Calvin Ridley plays the other one. And there's not a whole lot else. I mean, Traylon Burks is a big slot. Bryce Oliver, because he's a little bit more slight and a little bit smaller, would maybe profile as a slot, but he played outside mostly in the preseason last year when he played. So it's not like there's a ton of slot target competition here. I almost wonder if the Titans had a plan, and Jermari, the 4th round pick, is also a guy that they have multiple times in 3 separate press conferences talked about how they liked his versatility, ability to play inside and out. So it's not like he's going to eat up all the slot snaps either. So I think there's a real path to not just making the roster, but to playing time and contributing as a rookie for Xavier Restrepo. And one last thing, on his athleticism, he had catches of 66 yards, 63 yards, 77 yards last year. In playing in the Power 4 conferences, you don't put up numbers like that unless you have some level of athleticism. And he got caught from behind on a couple of those big long catch and runs, but he also took some of them to the house. So I'm not worried about athleticism slowing him down. His 3-cone time was still pretty good, even though his 40 wasn't, which shows that short area change of direction and the quick burst is there. And that's what you need in the slot. The Titans don't need Xavier Restrepo to be a down the field stretcher. That's why they drafted a 4-3 guy and a 4-4 guy in the 4th round, and you have Calvin Ridley. And so if Restrepo,
they've got speed.
For the first time in a long time, they have speed at the position. So we're spending a little bit longer on Restrepo here because we both really like the player and believe that he has a real pathway, again, not just to making the roster, but to playing, 20 snaps a game this season, maybe more than that. We'll see, but I'm really excited that they were able to add, like you said, it's like an extra draft pick.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Curious to see how he does at camp. Though that first clip of Cam Moore to Xavier Restrepo in rookie minicamp is going to go triple platinum on Twitter.
Oh yeah, it's going to hit like crack. All right, next guy on the list, DeVonta O'Malley, defensive tackle, Northern Illinois. Over to you.
I'm about to tweet this. Out of the lesser known Titans UDFAs, I think I am most intrigued by DeVonta O'Malley. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I've watched a ton of DeVonta O'Malley tape. Exchanged a great text with his agent a couple days ago, someone that I know well. But DeVonta O'Malley, 5 years at Northern Illinois, okay? 22 and a half career sacks. 8 this past season. 8 sacks this past year.
From the interior.
Small school, I get it. I mean, playing in the MAC. But 22 and a half sacks for DeVonta O'Malley. 8 this past year. 3 seasons with 4 or more. He had another year with 4 sacks. And another year with 5.5. But took a step forward this past year. 8 sacks. How about the athletic profile, okay? I'm going to read you from Relative Athletic Score right now. 6'2", 284. A little undersized, right? Again, there's a reason all these guys go undrafted. So small school, undersized. But 32-inch arms, not the worst thing in the world. Almost 11-inch hands. Like the measurables are pretty good, despite the weight being a little under than what you'd like. Now let's get into the athletic testing. Again, pro day numbers, slight grade of salts, but probably not insanely inaccurate either, right? 4.95 in the 40. That is an elite time. Even for 285 pounds, that's an elite time. 4.46 in the shuttle, 7.46 in the 3-cone. Elite times for a defensive tackle. 32.5-inch vertical, 9.5 broad. Elite jumps for a defensive tackle. 26 reps on the bench. Pretty good. So really what's working against this guy is he's a bit underweight. So, I mean, I hate to say this, but so was Jarrell Casey coming out. Like, there are underweight D tackles that carve out careers for themselves. But a lot of athleticism, a lot of production. Really, really curious to watch this guy.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. We've already talked about the other defensive tackle, competition there. He's definitely in the mix there. All right, next guy on our list is Micah Bernard, running back out of Utah. I don't know how much room there is for another running back on this roster, but definitely somebody that can get some snaps and some preseason run.
Yeah, a bit of an older prospect, was there in college for quite a while, but career high this past year, 1,009 rushing yards. Like you said, probably going to get a lot of preseason run. I don't think you're really going to see Pollard and Spears much. So what do you see in the preseason? This guy, Khalil Mullings, and Julius Chestnut, right? The Titans keep a fourth running back. There's a slight chance they do. It'll come down to Chestnut versus Bernard. Which one it looks better in the preseason? Which one looks better on special teams, right? That's Bernard's pathway to the roster. And on top of it, a guy like him, the quiet part out loud, if you get a lot of run in the preseason, it's also a showcase to 31 other teams, right? So even if you don't have a great chance of making the Titans roster, you can put some good stuff on tape, or you do great in the preseason and you force their hand. Like I didn't think Julius Chestnut out of Sacred Heart was going to be on this team for 3-4 years now. So, all you can ask for is an opportunity. Again, they're pretty deep at running back, but if they keep a fourth, he'll be in the mix.
Absolutely. All right, next guy on the list here is Cam Horsley, the defensive tackle out of Boston College. Another defensive tackle. They really loaded up at this position.
Yeah, this was a guy that I'm really intrigued by because the numbers don't jump off the page statistically, right? Like 40-something tackles in a couple years, not a lot of sack production. But before the draft, I spoke to a couple people I trust in that market, like in the New England area, Boston College, yada, yada, that was telling me this kid's freaking good, man. Like, I heard this kid is good. I thought he was going to get drafted. I haven't spoken to his agent yet, but I'll just go out and say this. I know who his agent is, and he does really well with like these day 3 athletic specimens. Like last year, agent had a bunch of guys that got drafted. This year, he had a bunch too. He had Anthony Belton, the tackle out of NC State. He had a couple of the undersized D tackle I really like as well. I think it was the kid from Maryland, Jordan Phillips. That's what it was, Jordan Phillips. Like I've heard this Cam Horsley kid is pretty legit and good size, 6'2", 312 pounds. Again, he was pretty athletic, 31.5-inch vert, all context, right? Good result for the position. Just over 5 seconds in the 40. That's not bad at 312 pounds. You got to take that into account. And the 20-yard split was quite good. It was a 2.88, which is actually very good. It's better than what the 40 was. Good broad jump, too, 9 foot flat. So solid result according to Relative Athletic Score. I've heard this kid can play, man. I was talking to guys in that area that thought the Patriots were going to draft him based on like the Boston College Boston College Patriots connection. Remember, Bill O'Brien's over there, knows Mike Vrabel well. The programs are close to each other. This was a good get, man. This is an interesting get for the Titans, no doubt. They got a couple of D linemen. The next one, we're not going to him next, but the next D lineman on the list is another one that's really intriguing.
Yeah. There's one more defensive tackle on this list that is pretty long. Again, 17 guys. But we'll move on now to a cornerback out of West Virginia, Garnett Hollis Jr.
Yeah, this one was one of the bigger named ones, if you will. This was one that I was familiar with going into the draft. West Virginia, previously played at Northwestern. He's aggressive on tape, maybe a little overly aggressive, but I think it was a bit of a theme for the Titans because they said the same thing about Marcus Harris, I think, in one of the conferences, that they liked how aggressive he was. Well, Garnett Hollis Jr. is aggressive as well. He's a Nashville native, by the way, so even though he didn't play locally, that is a lot of fun. There's a connection here to him. He's got good size, 6 foot 199, and good production in college. 12 pass breakups just in these last couple seasons. So Interesting player, good size, aggressive on tape. I think he fits their profile. At corner, let's run through the list real quick, right? If everyone's healthy, you've got Snead and Brownlee starting on the boundary. You've got McCreary at the nickel. You've got Darrell Baker Jr. as the premier backup outside. And I would say you're maybe Marcus Harris, because you drafted him, is your, I mean, you could cut a sixth round pick, but Marcus Harris has maybe got the inside track on being your number 5. I'll let you round off some of the other names on the roster, but the first 4 are the only ones that are locks to make it. Harris has the inside track for number 5. Garnett Hollis has a chance to come in, compete for that 5th spot or a 6th if they keep that many.
Yeah, so obviously L'Jarius Sneed, Jarvis Brownlee Jr., Roger McCreary, Darrell Baker. Those are your main cornerbacks. Gabe Judy Lawley is hanging around and still on the roster. The other guys are Marcus Harris and Clarence Lewis. So there's definitely some
Lewis
area.
Is a mistake. That's a mistake. I'm removing him from that list. That's an error. That's a website error by ESPN or whoever put that up.
Our lads. But so the other, we're going to talk about
You're missing 1, though.
4.
There's another UDFA. There's actually a couple more UDFA corners.
No, we're going to talk about 5 more UDFA corners here after Hollis Jr. All right, the next guy on the list, Justin, I'll handle this one. You've been doing so good with all these UDFAs, but the next one is someone that I'm intimately familiar with. David Gbenda, the linebacker out of Texas. David Gbenda is an undersized guy. I think he's like 5'11", 236. He's thick, but he's smaller when it comes to stature. He is an absolute dog, though. I hate to use that word because everybody says it, but he is a guy that is like relentless motor, always around the football. He played 6 years at Texas. A lot of people thought Texas was going to lose him to the NFL last year, and he decided to come back because he has been a leader in that room, and he wanted to continue to pursue Texas's quest for a national championship. Obviously, they came up just short again, losing in the semifinal 2 years in a row. But he's a guy that was like a leader for that defense. He's a really fun to root for guy. He has a ton of energy, big hits type of guy that comes downhill fast. And I think that, this is another position group that has maybe some top end players that we think are locks to be starters, but a lot of churning could be happening in the back end. All the backup linebackers on this roster were brought in, obviously, by the previous regime. The only linebackers this regime brought in was Cody Barton from Denver. So there could be some opportunity there just because the new regime said, we want to bring you into camp, but they didn't say that about these other guys. The other guys have just been here already. So I am curious to see how all that unfolds.
Yeah, you said it. You summarized that perfectly. I won't go too deep. David Gbenda, I think, has got a good chance to come in here and compete for a roster spot. Titans don't have a lot at linebacker. They don't end up drafting one. So there's a wide open competition, in my opinion, on this roster at linebacker. He had 61 tackles this past year, 5 tackles for loss. He's energetic, plays with a red-hot motor, instinctual, loves coming downhill. He's certainly got one of the better chances on this entire list to make the roster.
Yeah, quickly, the other linebackers, Cody Barton, I just mentioned. Otis Reese is slotted in as a starter right now, I guess. Cedric Gray from last year, James Williams from last year. They signed a guy named Curtis Jacobs, and then the other guy is David Gbenda. So
I think they already cut Curtis Jacobs. I'm pretty sure. Wow. They cut him a couple days ago before the draft.
Look at this Our Lads depth chart just being consistently a little out of date. All right, we got another guy to talk about. Actually, we have a lot more, so let's keep moving. Jalen Kimber, another cornerback, this one out of Penn State.
Another one I interviewed. I thought he was draftable. I was surprised he didn't get drafted. I thought round 6, round 7. In the NIL-fueled world, Georgia, Florida, Penn State. He played 3 different programs. But think about it. Enough talent to play at 3 really high-level programs throughout his career. I think that I'm old school, in my opinion, always going to prevent you from getting momentum. And when you're constantly switching programs, constantly switching defensive systems, think that slows you down a bit. I thought he was, pretty good for Penn State this past year. 37 tackles, 3 pass breakups. He was at the East-West Shrine Bowl. Remember, the Titans were there in spades to go talk and meet with Shador. So, this is one of the higher, bigger named, higher profile guys on the list. I had a borderline draftable grade on him.
Oh, wow. All right, we're going to keep moving here. A defensive end. First defensive end on the UDFA list is Desmond Evans out of North Carolina.
How about this? 5-star recruit when he came to North Carolina. I believe he was the number one ranked prospect in the state. Didn't live up to expectations at all. Stayed at North Carolina the whole time. As I was looking into it, was there an injury? Not really. Like, he played in a lot of football games over these past couple of years. Just wasn't very productive. Couldn't figure out what that was. 5 sacks this past year. Career high. Nothing to write home about. Is it hopefully a sign that the light bulb is starting to flicker on? Who knows? But 5-star recruit, you'll take a chance on those guys in undrafted free agency any day of the week.
Yeah, exactly. And when you talk about the defensive end room, I mean, it might be the thinnest group, even after signing Draymond Jones, even after drafting Femi Oladejo and signing Lorenzo Carter this offseason. The loss of Harold Landry is just intensified by the fact that there's not a whole lot of other guys. Arden Key, obviously. Ali Gay is sticking around. Jalen Harrell sticking around. Kyron Johnson is a guy I've not heard of him, so I don't even know who he is, but he's on the depth chart I'm looking at here. So definitely a chance for any defensive end to, if they come in and impress, to stake a claim to a roster spot here, because they just need somebody to step up and be like a guy at this position. We can keep moving here. We got another cornerback, Iowa cornerbacks. There's something about them, scout the name, not the logo, not the helmet, but I am maybe scouting the helmet a little bit here with Jermari Harris, cornerback out of Iowa.
Yeah, I'm going to go on a limb and say I think this guy's probably the most talented of the UDFA corners that they've signed. Now, there is some off-field stuff. This is according to Dane Bruckler. This is straight from the Beast. He had a DUI charge, or operating a vehicle while intoxicated, an alleged charge. I throw the word alleged anytime I talk about any of this stuff. He had an alleged charge, April 2022, suspended 1 game for that. Then he got suspended for 2 games the next year, 2023, for an alleged NCAA investigation into gambling or something like that. So there are 2 issues here that you are, somewhat uncomfortable with. 2-year starter, all Big Ten guy at Iowa. Great size for the position, 6'1", 190, 27 career starts, 8 picks, 27 career pass breakups. Like, this is a good football player. You're playing at Iowa, a Big Ten program. You've got great size. You've got great ball production, a couple of all team selections. This is a good football player. If he can, get his head in the right place. I've talked to one person who had good things to say about the character. They just felt he was a young kid who made a mistake and has taken accountability and grown from it. There's a chance that, if that's the case, he'll probably impress in rookie minicamp. Again, I think of the 5 corners they signed, or 5 or 6, whatever it is, this one is probably the one with the most talent, but, you've got to apply yourself, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see what happens there. We got another cornerback, and this is not our last one. We have 2 more after this. Virgil Lemons, cornerback out of West Florida.
West Florida, we're not going to pretend that anyone knows a lot about the West Florida program, right? The thing that stuck out to me immediately with this guy was return ability. He's returned kicks and punts a little bit. I mean, punts quite a bit. He had 13 return punts in 2023, so there's an extensive history here as a returner. The Titans are quite loaded at corner. We just went through all the UDFAs. Maybe there's an underdog story here, but I'm going to guess, a guy like, he's going up against a guy like Jalen Kimber, who played at Florida, Georgia, Penn State. A guy like Jermari Harris, 2-time all Big Ten selection, Iowa. Like, they've got some big name guys, even as UDFAs at corner. And we know there's probably 1 spot available in the entire room. So this guy certainly got his work cut out for him. But if I had to guess, a kid coming from West Florida is going to show up with a huge chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, we got 4 more guys to talk about here. Philip Blidi, defensive tackle, Auburn, is the next one on the list.
So the Titans are obsessed with Auburn, apparently, an undrafted free agent. I think this was the 3rd guy. Out of the 17 UDFAs, 3 of them played at Auburn this past season. So that's the fact that I found interesting. He previously played at Texas Tech and Indiana as well. I mean, it's college football nowadays. You play for 4 different programs by the time you hit the NFL draft. So 3 programs for Philip Blidi, Auburn this past year. I think what concerns me about him is not a lot of sack production, and it's not like he's got nose tackle size, right? Whereas there wasn't a lot of sack production for like an Isaiah Raikes. He's a nose tackle. This guy's more of a D tackle through and through. Again, he's got some interest from big programs, but he's going to have to come in and prove he can rush the passer more effectively than he did at Auburn.
Yeah, I agree. And we've talked about the defensive tackle room, so we'll move right along to another corner. Davion Ross, cornerback out of Memphis. Maybe some of our listeners are familiar with the local product.
Yeah, Davion Ross played the last couple of years here at Memphis. Before that, he played a program I consider local a little bit, is Eastern Kentucky, where I believe Eastern Kentucky is part of the Titans radius, where they have those guys in for like local pro days. I think Matt Jackson played at Eastern Kentucky. So Titans are very familiar with that Eastern Kentucky program. They're obviously very familiar with that Memphis program. Bit undersized, 5'10", 175. That tends to indicate nickel, right? They've got some competition there already. 14 pass breakups this past year, though. So really good ball production. He's aggressive. He drives downhill, breaks on the ball. He's also got some production as a kickoff returner. So to me, this is a backup reserve nickel corner competition, another special teams return competition. Interesting player. I'm pretty high on him and curious to see how he does.
Yeah, there's a lot of competition in that room, and there's going to be a lot of competition for those special team spots because I think, again, the guys who separate at the back end of the depth chart, yeah, some of them, sure, you see some upside to play in every down role on defense or whatever, but to make the roster, you have to be able to contribute on special teams, and how bad the Titans special teams unit was last year and even the last few years, it's nice to see that there's going to be a ton of guys who, if they want to even make the NFL, they have got to be good on special teams. And you got John Bones Fossil coaching the unit now. So I feel a lot more confident in the direction of that particular group, especially with how many guys like who would seemingly profile as good special teams players they've brought in this UDFA class. We got two more to hit. The next one is Kaden Moore, center out of Virginia Tech.
Yeah, Kaden Moore started 12 games this past year. He played almost 800 snaps, according to the team website, and he allowed just 2 sacks. Again, Pro Football Focus, grain of salt, but interesting player. I think what strikes me the most about him is there's some guard center flexibility here. He actually moved to center just prior to 2023. So these last 2 years at center, but 2022 and prior, he played guard and quite a bit of it. So Bill Callahan's going to love that flexibility, as we know, and that's important in camp, right? Just to kind of get you through, practice. So they didn't sign any other interior linemen, right? And the only other offensive lineman undrafted free agency is Brendan Crenshaw-Dickson, who is no doubt a tackle. So it's not like he's kicking inside. So this is the only interior lineman in undrafted free agency. Now, of course, they drafted one in Jackson Slater, who I'm very high on. So it's not like they added no one. But there's some competition inside there, right? Jackson Slater, I think, is one of your premier backups. I love Corey Levin, but I'm not going to say he's guaranteed a roster spot, right? Like if Kaden Moore comes in, and there are a couple other guys, I'll let you round off the depth chart in a second, but if Kaden Moore comes in, why can't he push Corey Levin, right? And keep in mind, teams love getting younger and cheaper, right? You're not getting cheaper, but you're getting younger because Corey Levin's up there in age. He's, reached his performance ceiling at this point. If Kaden Moore is anything close to Corey Levin in camp, there could be a question there.
Yeah, we mentioned some of these guys already. Blake earlier when we were talking about Crenshaw-Dickson, but yeah, Blake Hance, Brendan James, obviously you said Corey Levin, Andrew Rupsich is hanging around, Chandler Brewer.
You rounded off those names, you're reminding me, there's a decent amount of competition there. Like Andrew Rupsich has been around for a couple years, Corey Levin's been around for a couple of years. They just signed Brendan James, who's got some experience. Oh, Sam Mustipher, I think we forgot as well. They just signed Sam Mustipher the same day they signed Brendan James and Ali Udo, who you mentioned earlier. So there's actually some back-end guys in the interior that are at least NFL caliber.
Yeah, and Jackson Slater's going to be moving up and pushing some of these other guys down the depth chart, I think,
right away.
Which means that's more competition for anyone who wants to try to make the roster. I wouldn't predict Kaden Moore makes the roster because I do think they've added a ton of competition to the depth at the interior offensive line. All right, last guy on the list here, a guy I'm a little bit familiar with but don't remember super well, Jerrin Thompson, the defensive back out of Auburn, who also, before he was at Auburn, spent some time as a Texas Longhorn. So I'll let you start, and then I'll tell you what I sort of remember about him, which again isn't much.
Auburn and Texas. Again, this is the third Auburn UDFA on the list. They drafted T'Vondre Sweat last year, Gunnar Helm this year, and they bring in David Gbenda as a UDFA. Jerrin Thompson checks both the Auburn and Texas boxes. He had 65 tackles this past year at Auburn. This is a box safety, right? He had 83 at Texas in 2022. Like when I saw he transferred away from Texas, I assumed he didn't play very much. Obviously, he played a lot in 2022 to have 83 tackles, 23 career PBUs, 7 interceptions. Again, I think this is a box safety. He's very limited athletically. He's limited in space, not a mobile guy. And as we talked about, Titans have some competition there at safety. So they drafted one. They signed one in free agency. They've got other UDFAs at safety and Clarence Lewis. So, not a great chance here, but he's a name, played at some big programs and put up some numbers.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when they were going through the draft class, and this is sort of an overall for not just the draft class, not just the UDFA class, the whole group of rookies that are coming in. Mike Borgonzi said yesterday at his press conference that, one of the things he said when he was talking about the class was 8 of the 9 guys are from the Power 4 schools, which is interesting because I think as we keep moving forward in this NIL world, guys that get drafted out of non-Power 4 schools are going to become more and more rare. And the reason for that is these big-time schools don't have to pluck out recruits from high school and grow them into great players in their programs anymore. They can pluck guys from smaller schools that have great traits or that were overlooked or that were like a Cam Moore that were overlooked in the recruiting process and pull them to their big Power 4 school. So I think, if there's guys like multiple guys the Titans drafted and some of these guys on this UDFA list started their career at a smaller school and then transferred through the portal to a bigger school, and that's what their like drafted school, that's who gets the credit for being, for having drafted them, even though they were discovered or got started at a smaller school. So I think that just shows that like these are the schools that the big time colleges were able to scout and recruit from smaller schools. And then the Titans went and also sort of did the same thing, drafting from those Power 4 conferences. And a ton of these UDFAs are from those Power 4 schools too. You mentioned the 3 Auburn guys. There's a Texas guy, Florida, Miami, Syracuse, Boston College, Penn State, North Carolina, Iowa, Memphis. Like, yeah, there's a West Virginia in here, but, obviously West Virginia, West Virginia. There's a West Florida in here, Northern Illinois in here, but for the most part, these guys all come from Power 4. And then the other big overall note on the UDFA class, you sort of hinted at it there a second ago, but 13 of the 17 guys on defense, only 4 on offense. I don't remember seeing many UDFA classes that were that unbalanced. So only 1 wide receiver. Obviously, we've been begging the Titans to add receivers for years, and they added 2 during the draft, 2 during free agency, 1 here in the UDFA class, who is a guy that we think is, the most likely out of this whole group to make the roster. So you don't need 4 undrafted free agent receivers or 3 undrafted free agent this class because you actually have those bodies now in that competition. So a good class. Justin, I don't know how I could possibly do this episode without you. You carried us through this one. Hope your back's not too sore from me sitting up there on your shoulders. But any last final parting words on this class before we say goodbye?
No, every year you guys tell us how much you love this episode. You love the undrafted free agency episode. We tried to hit it as early as we could this year. And again, I essentially confirmed pretty much everyone on this list. So when the Titans eventually tweet this out in a couple days, a week, pretty confident it's going to be these 17. And there's always a chance someone's going to fail a physical, right? That all has to happen still. But I'm pretty confident this is going to be our most accurate year when it comes to profiling this UDFA. So we ran through all 17 of them. And you know me, I'm a nerd. I told you before, I don't know if I know enough about these guys. Felt like I knew enough about them. I think I put some good stuff out here. So appreciate you guys for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks to everyone who tuned in, and make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Give this video a thumbs up, like, and drop a comment below. What do you make of this class? Any trends that you noticed that we didn't point out, just drop a comment below. We'll get in there and respond to you guys. Thanks also to Sinkers Beverages, again, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville. If you head to their website, you can join the In Crowd, which is a free membership that gives you exclusive perks like allocated wines and spirits, early access to barrel releases, and more. So check out Sinkers Beverages, linked in the description as well. And until next pod, I don't know if we're going to be back until late this week, or I'm still working on some videos, Justin. I want to do I'm working very hard on designing the perfect offense around Cam Ward, looking at his concepts that he ran best at Miami. I'm also going to incorporate some of the concepts the Titans ran last year under Brian Callahan that seemed like similar to what some of the stuff Miami was doing. And then, if you want to read more about these UDFAs, Justin, you got an article up on Titan Sized that has the whole list there and a little blurb about each one, right?
Yeah, the headline is Titans make 13 moves after undrafted free agency. So if you're a little confused, it's really bad practice to change headlines. You can't change headlines after they publish. So if you go into the article, all 17 players are listed, and I put an update at the bottom of the page. The Titans have now agreed to terms with 17 players. So don't be thrown off by the headline. You can't change headlines in this industry. Google just buries you if you change headlines. You can't do it. So go ahead and read the piece if you want more summaries of every single player on this list.
And if you missed our last episode going through the entire draft class and giving a grade out for each pick and sort of projecting out the role of each player both for this season and beyond, go back in the feed and find us one video before this one or one pod before this one if you're on audio. We appreciate everyone for tuning in. Until next time, y'all stay safe out there and tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.